Hi guys, I am Bjorn, and this is Tasty.
The wrong intro
The wrong
because I
intro.
was no, sorry. Yeah, this is book club. I'm Tasty Graph. Thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah,
Once again, we managed to butcher the intro.
that's good. That's now a thing. We need to butcher the intro,
Yep.
and we got some of the technical stuff solved. I hope. But you're back on your main computer.
Yeah, I'm back on my main computer, but I'm using the microphone from the webcam, so it's not as awesome as it could be, but it's better than the previous solution. Hopefully, we won't have laggy camera and stuff.
Huzzah! Super Jesse with the
HUZAAAH.
4 times resub. We will do some dancing for you after the book club. But thank you so much, and please put some hype in chat. Um, so last stream it depends. Again. I'm on the second edition, The Art of Game Design, A Book of Lenses. So I have the second edition, and Tasty has the first edition. So we're a bit different chapters, but the content is about the same. So I'm on chapter 6 and 7, and I think you're on 5 and 6.
Yep, I was on 5 and 6, and chapter 5 was elements support a theme. So, yeah, that entire chapter basically talks about the theme, and the lens also supports that. Do you want to skip to the lens?
Yeah, we can. There's something I want to start with here, which I like in the
Yeah.
beginning, which kind of maybe smooths it into the theme. So let's just get started. So it says here, great themes and deep meanings are often associated with literature or with great works of art. Is it pretentious for mere games to aspire the same levels of greatness? And I just wanted to kind of read this out loud because I think that's kind of a. It also says here a good quote in the beginning: "To write a mighty book, you must choose a mighty theme." So, you know, games have not been seen as art or like a great way to kind of persuade people, you could say, or like influence people. But I think over the years now, especially in the 2000s, it's slowly been changing to where we have stuff like Bioshock, which talks about very very complicated things, and the theme becomes more and more important. So we can
Yeah.
then. I don't know if you have anything to say, Tasty. Any thoughts?
Well, just a little. I mean, this is also referenced in the book, but I just want to add that, of course, in my opinion, are games going to go in this direction where they are being taken more and more seriously? And if you look at what movies were like in the beginning, they started as silent movies and stuff where they basically just recorded a train going and people were like, this is just a fad, it's never gonna go through, it's just we don't like it, it's crap. It did get better, and same thing's gonna happen with games. It has happened with games, but it's gonna get even more better.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it was in this before the first lens already. He was saying like got quite big claim where he says all media, so movies, music, everything are all subgenres of games, and everything new that's gonna come is also gonna be a subgenre of games,
Yeah.
which I would say I at least partially agree with, but I'm a bit more maybe careful to say that kind of a big statement. Like we don't even know what the future media might be, so who knows if it's gonna be a subset of games.
Yeah.
But I think
Well,
that's still a
I
good
think he
point.
is right though in that sense, because um, the common thing for all of these things are really the whole experience thing, um, and I feel that when you're reading a book or watching a movie or watching a play, etc., it is a form of a game. It's like some people set out to solve a problem, which is what games are about. So they made the experience for you. In a way, it's all a form of games, even though we've talked about what makes a game and what doesn't make a game. But I feel that they are kind of all, well, they're all entertaining, and they are in a way games. Some require more problem solving than others from the viewers or the player.
Yeah, and actually, one point is also that when you play a game, even more the experience a lot of the time is in the person, especially in board games and stuff like that. Like you might have like a lot of experiences with other people. Like let's say I'm playing a board game and I meet my wife or girlfriend through that, and then it's a lot of people don't attribute the game to that because it actually creates that social interaction. Um,
Yeah.
and it's kind of invisible that actually games actually have a major role because the game designer actually designs that experience. So which leads in to our first lens, I guess, the lens of unification.
Yes.
You have the same one, I hope. It's always
Yeah,
I'm
mine
always
is called
scared of it.
lens number 9, the lens of unification.
Yep.
To use this lens, consider the reason behind it all. Ask yourself these questions. What is my theme? Am I using every means possible to reinforce that theme? The lens of unification works very well with the lens of elemental tetrad, the one we had last week. Use the tetrad to separate out the elements of your game so that you can more easily study them from the perspective of a unified theme.
So here you
We
can
have
see
the same one, right?
Yeah. And here you can see the tetrad. It's aesthetics, story, mechanics, and technology.
Yeah.
I want to start off with saying, like, I'm surprised it's not called the lens of themes.
Yeah. It should have been, I guess, in a way, because, well, no, I mean, well, it could be called the lens of theme, but then again, it's also about bringing together the 4 elements from the tetrad into enforcing and supporting your theme. But I mean,
True.
theme is a good
The reason I
choice too.
even think about that is just because it might be easier to understand, like more transparent kind of way. Like you actually are thinking about the theme, but by saying lens of unification, like you said, you look at all those elements and how to make them unite into one single purpose, which is the theme.
Yeah.
And that way, yes, lens of unification is not bad. It's just harder to remember, I would say. Lens of obscurity. Hey, by the way, Subseed Pod, Flippo, Spectrum, everybody we haven't said hi to. We're focusing a lot on discussion during the stream, so we are reading all the comments and we will pick questions. So if you have any questions or anything you're wondering or not understanding, please ask them in the chat and we will pick them up. But we won't read every comment out loud. So yeah, for me, this like the theme actually something kind of central for game design. Like I think we'll even discuss this here. Like you might not start off with the theme, but very fast the theme is very important to start considering because that's the thing that kind of makes you do the right decisions. Like if you don't have a strong theme or you don't know what the theme is, you might start like just randomly putting mechanics, story, things like that, and it doesn't like they don't support each other as strongly as if you have a theme.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's one of the more important. Again, like last chapters, the lens of endogenous value and the lens of experience and lens of surprise have been strong, and I think this is one other that's very strong, at least for me personally, that looking at the game through the theme, deciding on the theme as actually a thing. Like if you do write a GDD, that's probably it is one of the things you should mark down is what is the theme of the game.
Yeah.
Should we?
Spectrum says.
Yeah.
Sorry, Spectrum says, is theme the same as IP? And that's a really good question because in this aspect, when we're talking about theme, we're really talking about the whole basis of the game, so to speak. Like a theme could be to feel like a hero, or a theme could be, as is described in the book, to live a pirate's life. So we're not talking just aesthetics here. We're talking more about the main concept in a sort of higher level, because you could have a game where it's about being a superhero, but that would be the theme. That's like a hero story or some sort of what do you call it? Like an ancient instinct for people. We want to be strong, or we want to be the main character, or we want to be free. So the theme could be experience freedom. But that doesn't really tell us anything about where is this setting, like which world is this in, and that's where the lens of unification kind of comes in, because you'll say, okay, what's my theme? I want to feel free. That could be a game about a bird flying, or it could be a game about a guy who gets imprisoned and needs to get out of there. So just to clarify, it's not like the theme is not necessarily an IP. It's a broader concept.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to define. He does it very well in the book, like showing examples. He talks a lot, and even pulling from when they made parts of the Caribbean VR experience. I think you had the same one, right?
Yeah.
For Disney and for Disney World, I think. And I see it as like it's kind of like, what is the experience you want to create? So it goes back a bit to the lens of experience. So it's kind of through that too, but it also, like you said, brings out the world setting and things like that. Like saying, what does it feel like really living as a pirate might be the theme, which was in the book that you mentioned. Or what could be another thing, like
Love.
love.
Theme could be love is stronger than death.
Yeah.
And you kind of see that theme in a lot of stories. You see it in Titanic. That's they talk about that in the book, but you also see it in Greek mythology and also Norse mythology. There are stories about common or not so common people overcoming death, going down to the realm of hell or hell to find their long lost dead love and bring them back to life. So the theme is, again, it's a concept more than, it's like the goal. It says also here in the book, a unifying theme is good. It focuses your design towards a single goal. So it's big. It's huge.
Yeah. And I think the important thing is like, the more it's kind of, how to say, you through the theme, like if you just have the theme love, it's a bit simple. It could be still, anything. But instantly say like, love defeating death, it's totally, that already gives much more context. It gives much more strength to the theme. And I would say that's the thing you need to find. Is like the game I'm working on right now, the theme kind of is escaping your reality, because it's a witch game, so she's stuck in a tower, so she's trying to escape the reality that she's a princess, which she's kind of not in the game anymore, and then she's trying to escape herself. So that's kind of, and then thinking about the mechanics, which he also does very well here, which we haven't talked about, like looking at the mechanics then, like, okay, what are mechanics I could, for example, put in my game that would elevate kind of escapism, or like what would bring that feeling? Maybe I can add a bit to the story to kind of bring that forward, or maybe I'll adjust the ending, or how can I bring that forward? And a lot of the time actually, and this is something he mentions in the book, it's not something transparent. You don't have to write, like the game's name doesn't need to be Escape from Tower 5, of Doom. It can be something like, in the book, he uses again the Pirates of the Caribbean Joyride, the roller coaster, as an example, and they kind of didn't steal, but they borrowed the theme from that, and they actually went there, and they went through that roller coaster many times, and they couldn't find the theme until they listened to the theme song that was playing in the speakers, and then they were like, oh, it's about the life of a pirate, the fantasy around that, and that's the thing, like. And even in Titanic, the movie's name is Titanic. You start watching it, you think it's about people going and partying on a boat and then sinking, but it actually is a love story. So, and not only once you've actually watched it and you analyze it, do you maybe realize that, okay, that's actually the main theme of the movie. The theme wasn't, in a way, Titanic. Kill boss, ruiner. Should you put your
Yeah.
theme in the game pitch? You can. Um, in a way, my personal opinion, this is just a personal opinion, it's not something he says in the book or something that's fact. I think it kind of ruins if you do that, because it's kind of like you put your expectations here. If the ride's name in Disney would be like, experience how to be truly a pirate, I would be like, oh, you know. I don't know how you feel, Tasty.
I'm I'm kind of the opposite because I feel like if you're pitching something, I'm assuming that we're talking about like trying to sell your idea to investors, etc.
Hmm.
Then you kind of need to have a theme that really resonates with people. Um, and if you know that your theme resonates with people, then why not bring it out? Just say my game's about the main theme of my game is achieving freedom. You play a ninja who can climb on walls and jump and blah blah blah. So we really want to like reinforce that experience of being free and not being stuck and being able to jump around as you please and getting that joy of jumping into the game. But I realize that what I'm saying now, first of all, is like made up on the spot and it's not a pitch as such. But I still feel that it's something that you should be prepared to tell people about. Like, because this is the main theme of your game. Just like if, let's say I was making that Disney ride with the life of a pirate, um, I'm pretty sure that it would be a good idea to say, experience the life of a pirate. Because that's essentially what the ride is. You're out in the sea, you're shooting cannons, you're having the wind in your hair, etc., etc.
Yeah, it depends all how you say it, definitely. Um, it makes sense to say it in the ride, definitely. But I would actually just saying Pirates of the Caribbean, experience Pirates of the Caribbean probably brings more of a crowd in many ways. And then,
Yeah,
yeah, it depends also who you're pitching to. I just, for me personally, why I said that is just because a lot of time I don't want to set the bar too high when I'm pitching. I'd rather people play it. Like I'm thinking about pitching it to the player. But yes, if you're pitching it to an investor, you need to bring out all your guns. And if your theme is very strong, and especially if it talks about something relevant um, to the investor, then definitely you should bring it out. There's no
yeah,
hard and fast rules. Like you need to be able to at the spot say what the theme is if you need be, and then also omit that if need be, depending on how you see things. So pitching is kind of tricky.
yeah. A good rule is know the people that you're pitching to. I know this sounds kind of weird, but really, if you're a salesperson, which you kind of are when you're pitching your stuff, then you need to sort of know who you're dealing with on the other side of the table or the other side of the room, or if you're doing a presentation or whatever. You need to say what they want to hear, but you also need to make sure that the people that you're talking to want to hear the stuff that you have to say, if that makes sense. So, you know, if you picked some people to pitch to that are really not your kind of people, then you're screwed. Really.
Yeah. I also think there's two things I think about when pitching. It's a bit off topic from the book, but um, one is to get there's this technique where you try to get three yeses from the people you're pitching to. So it doesn't matter what it is, but you need to you basically have to kind of influence them to be in thinking in a positive way. So thinking yes, 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 like did you have a dream as a kid? Yeah, I did. Oh, and then whatever, it could be something else, and then you build upon that. And then of course you need to adjust depending on how the person reacts. Um, the the other thing is kind of don't see yourself like a lot of people when they go pitching see themselves as I'm here down here and they're up here and I need to kind of worship them and I'm begging kind of. And I think that's not the right attitude. The right attitude should be like, if you're gonna get an investor, they're gonna be a partner in what you're gonna do. So you should see it more as finding a partner or finding a colleague. So it's more a hiring process even for you. They're of course investigating you, but you should also be investigating them, seeing that they're the right people. Like, not everybody who throws money at you are gonna be the right people to work with. So
Yeah.
that's stuff to, keep in mind. But yeah, he goes really, really deep, I think, in this book, explaining. So it's kind of hard for us to go through it because it's his experiences. But I definitely, if you have the book, I really recommend reading all of this. He has really good practical kind of, even taking it to where he explains how the theme, like here's a list of things, like you can see these kind of industry, like music. How did the theme affect the music of the VR experience? How did it affect the visuals? How did it affect the interface, the motion platform, the modified 3D glasses, the stereoscopics? All the choices, basically, he's trying to say, is affected by the theme. And
Yeah.
he does a
I
really
really
good job.
like the part about the air vents because they were asked by, I guess, the people building the structure. They were asked on this Pirates of the Caribbean ride, where do you want us to place the vents? And they were like, at first they thought, well, let's just, whatever, just place them anywhere. And then they kind of realized, hey, if we place these hot air vents or whatever, if we place them in a specific location, then it feels like the breeze of the ocean. And that's a really cool way to kind of bring in technology and bring in your constraints into your theme. So I really like that story. And I feel that the whole chapter 5 really was about, well, the theme, but it was also about how he did these 3 different projects or 2 different projects and brought in a lot of stories. And it was actually I felt that it was an easy to read chapter, but it was also a little bit difficult to kind of, put into game dev practice.
Yeah, a lot of his examples were not like digital. They were more also pulling into the physical world with the VR and things like that, which
Yeah.
I still think are good, strong examples because it kind of shows how much effort goes into making even like Disney rides. Like, it's so easy to take it for what is it called? Take it for granted. Like, oh, this is just how it is. Of course you would do this, but when you don't have something to base it on, um, everything needs to be decided, and having a theme definitely supports that. Which brings
Yeah.
us to the next lens, the lens of resonance, right?
Yep. But first, let's just say hello to
Yep.
Zodit and Crydex. Thank you for popping by.
Sup, Zodit? And Crytex, and see. Let's see here. Is there any other? Okay.
Nope.
To use the lens of resonance, you must look for hidden power. Ask yourself these questions. What is it about my game that feels powerful and special? When I describe my game to people, what ideas get them really excited? If I had no constraints of any kind, what would this game be like? I have certain instinct about how this game should be. What is driving those instincts? The lens of resonance is quiet, delicate instrument. It is a tool for listening to yourself and listening to others. We bury important things deep inside ourselves, and when something causes them to resonate, it takes us to our very core. The fact that these things are hidden gives them power, but also makes them hard for us to find.
Yeah. So again, this lens kind of, it has a lot to do with the theme because it takes us back to that thing where does our theme, does our game resonate within us? And this is a very, very quote unquote fluffy thing because, what makes you resonate might not make me resonate. Generally, you'll say, okay, well, human beings are kind of the same. We all want to fly. we all want to feel powerful.
Except
We
if you're
want to
afraid of
be
heights.
heroes. Yeah, but again, that's
Yeah.
what I mean. It's like you could very well be a person who is afraid of heights, and you probably don't want to fly. I don't know, but
No.
so this is like you kind of need to turn it around a bit when it says this. What is it about my game that feels powerful and special? You're kind of screwed if nothing in your game feels powerful and special. So this doesn't really work as well as the other lenses, in my opinion. I do like the one that says, when I describe my game to people, what ideas get them really excited? Like not everyone get excited about the stuff that I do in my games or the stuff that you do in your games. Like most game devs are kind of into the whole crafting thing. If we talk about, like, I made a game, and in this game you loot stuff from enemies, and then you use it to craft things to let you kill more powerful enemies, and it's super awesome, and you design your own stuff in the game. A lot of us would say, oh, this is cool, I love that, because we like building. Humans generally like building, but it just might not resonate with everyone. So again, we have to be careful with the things that resonate or the things that feel powerful. It's not like just because everyone we talk to think it's awesome, that doesn't make it necessarily awesome for the whole world. And I know I know it's kind of obvious, but the book doesn't talk about it. It's more like, if you find a powerful thing, then everyone will think it's powerful. Almost.
Yeah.
And I don't think so.
I think also, like you touched upon the whole subject, is that it really matters who you're talking to. For example, I pitched my game idea, like especially in Finland, people here are much more mobile oriented. They're much more either mobile or like hardcore, like StarCraft and things like that. So if you try to pitch them more of an indie game, more like a platformer or something like that, it's not gonna get them very excited. Whereas if you go to the US and you go to PAX or something like that, where the core audience is people who love indie games, you're gonna get a lot of resonation. So really knowing who you're pitching to and what they like also, and taking that into consideration. Like, if I'm pitching my game to my mom, it's good if it resonates with her too. The theme, for example, is very interesting. But when you pitch the gameplay, they might be like, oh, okay, yeah. And sometimes even you can convert those people, but they usually have to play the game. And actually, the lens of resonance, I like it in the way that it kind of brings back to that listening, right? In the first chapter, I think, where he's talking about self.
Yeah, it was the first chapter. The most important skill for a game designer.
Exactly. And this is kind of like, again, this is kind of listening at yourself and listening to others. And this kind of builds on that you need to listen to yourself and also think about, why do you feel like that? Like, why do you feel this is important? And try to put it in words, not because of somebody else, but because of yourself, so you understand yourself better. Because don't take it as self-evident that you understand yourself always. You will do decisions where you're even yourself hesitating, like, I don't know, I just feel like this is the right thing, or this is what I want to do. And then if you can put into words why, it might resonate even more for you, and you can maybe find the kind of, the red line, or like the silver lining that's going to help you make the game great. I don't remember, was there anything else, or should we go to the next chapter?
It kind of, in my book, it's the last thing in that chapter.
Yeah,
so
it is.
There isn't really that much.
No, I mean more like, is there anything we want to bring out?
No,
I don't have any
think
notes
so.
here, at least.
Nope.
I think the next one has more stuff to comment on.
Yeah, and it's a really, really long chapter. I like it though. It basically says the game begins with an idea, and we have a lot of idea people in the world.
Yeah.
And as creative people out there, you probably have met the idea person. Luckily, this is really not what this chapter is about. But it is about inspiration, how to get new ideas. And I like some of the tools or the methods that it brings out. But again, it's one of these sort of magical chapters where we talk about stuff that's not tangible, and science can't really define it either. Because, I mean,
Yeah.
do you have a muse? Do I have a muse? Personally, I've never spent time trying to figure out what my muse is. You know, I'm not really sure I'm in touch with my muse.
Who's Muse? I don't know her.
Yeah, well, Muse could be a guy as well, but
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it
for
does.
those of you who don't know what a muse is, it's basically it's kind of your subconsciousness that gives you inspiration, and a lot of poets and stuff back in the old days, they basically said that the muse was sort of a creature in the back of your mind that came out every now and then and helped you write these things, helped you write your books, or helped you develop things, or sparked your creativity. And to some extent, I guess it's true, because, I mean, I get a lot of my inspiration from sleeping or from thought that just pops out of nowhere when I'm not really focused on it.
Yeah, sleeping is very important for me. Like,
Yeah.
it's weird, but even taking a nap, really. Like, even at work, I will go, like, we have a couch, I will just lie down. I'll just take 10 minutes. I'll just lie down. I won't even, first I'm like, I'm really tired, I need to sleep. Like, not need to sleep, but like, I want to rest a bit and think about a problem. But then in the end, I'll just lie down and I'll just think about the problem. And then I actually solve it while I'm lying there. And then I'll go back to work and I'll get like 2-3 times more done, because sometimes when you're kind of in the heat of it, it's kind of hard to see through it. And once you kind of stop struggling with it and kind of just take a rest, it'll solve itself. It's kind of your subconscious. It's like, he's even an example here. A good example for this is like, when you forget somebody's name, or a movie's name, or an actor's name, and then, you're like, oh, it's on the tip of your tongue, but you don't know what it is. And then you kind of try to force yourself. You're like, I know this. And then you either Google it, which a lot of people do, or then you can like just take a step back, and usually instantly you let go of it, like, okay, whatever. And then like minute after, it's like, bing, oh, it's, David Hasselhoff. Oh, yeah, of course. So, your subconscious doesn't work on your will and whim, is what it's trying to say.
Yeah.
Tom
It was
Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
Crap. No, it was David Hasselhoff for sure. So the lens of infinite inspiration is next. Do you want to read that one to keep up that?
Yep. Lens number 11. The lens of infinite inspiration. When you know how to listen, everybody is the guru. And that is a quote by Ram Dass. To use this lens, stop looking at your game and stop looking at games like it. Instead, look everywhere else. Ask yourself these questions. What is an experience I've had in my life that I would want to share with others? In what small way can I capture the essence of that experience and put it into my game? And then it continues on the next page. Using this lens requires an open mind and a big imagination. You need to search your feelings and observe everything around you. You must be willing to try the impossible, for surely it's impossible for a roll of the dice to capture the excitement of a sword fight, or for a video game to make a player feel afraid of the dark, isn't it? Use this lens to find the non-game experiences that will inspire your game. Your choices in the different quadrants of the tetrad, technology and mechanics, story and aesthetics, can each be united by a single inspiration, or each can build on different inspirations, blending them together to create something entirely new. When you have concrete visions based on real life that guide your decision-making, your experience will acquire an undeniable power, strength, and uniqueness. This lens works hand in hand with lens number 1, essential experience. Use the lens of infinite inspiration to seek and find beautiful experiences, and the lens of essential experience to bring them into your game. So that is a lot of blah blah for something really, really
People
short.
tuned out already. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
they're finding
And
inspiration while you're talking.
I don't blame them. I mean, but essentially, basically what this says is, if you want to make a game, if you want to be creative, then don't just copy other games. And I use the word copy because, that's how we create stuff. That's how babies learn how to walk. They look at other people and they copy it. Don't look at other people's games exclusively. Look outside of that. Take a walk. Take a vacation. Go to the library. Watch a movie. Um, I don't know. Get in a bar brawl. No, don't do that. But, go out there, experience stuff, and that can lead to inspiration. I think that a lot of people kind of neglect this. Like they'll be so focused on making a great game that is really all that they're thinking about. And sometimes you get inspiration when you're doing other stuff than just working hard. Yeah, Seedpod Game says, making a bar brawl game. I'm going to go into a bar brawl and figure out how to do it.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, the chapter starts actually with kind of example. Like most people, make their games is like think of an idea, try it out, keep changing and testing until it seems good enough. And he says even it might seem amateurish, but this is actually how you make games. There's nothing wrong with it. But if everybody else is using this method, right? So if your inspiration are just other games, you're just gonna create the same games everybody else is creating. And he has a very nice story about he used to be a juggler himself, and how he found this man who is kind of juggling a bit different than everybody else, and he kind of showed that the reason this was because everybody else was copying each other, so they were showing each other the tricks, and then everybody was doing the same way. What he did was he was going out and he went and looked at ballet, and then he was like, okay, what if I took this ballet move and made it a juggle move? Or he looked at, what was it, like even solid objects like, what was it?
A paper punch machine.
Yeah, paper punch machine, and that was one of his moves. He tried to imitate this action or the object. So I think that is like it's something I also talk about the stream a lot. Like you need to have life experience. You need to do other things than play games and make games, especially if you want to bring something new and unique to the genre. Like it's super hard. Like if you try to just be like, okay, I want to make a super innovative game, and then you go like, okay, let me take this game and that game, and then everybody else is doing that. It's not gonna be everybody can come to the same conclusion, but instantly you go off script and you go like, oh, I'm gonna go and watch opera, and someone's singing, and I wanna take that into the game. Then everybody's gonna, okay, where did this come from? And that's when you create new and interesting experiences.
Yeah, Zodit says, but outside is crazy. And Seedpod Game says, damn, look at Cuphead. That creativity is insanity. Yeah, but again, I get what you're saying, but it's basically, obviously I haven't played the game, but I've seen it. It's basically a platformer shooter with an aesthetic taken from 1930s cartoons. And it's super cool, and there's like so much work behind it. Don't get me wrong, it looks amazing. I really like just looking at it. That's a case of, not looking at other computer games, but looking at something that might have inspired them when they were kids, or looking at something that they really enjoyed doing. I'm assuming that maybe they were animators professionally or something before they got into that crazy art style. I don't know. But yeah, it's...
Well, using that as the example, you probably wouldn't come to the conclusion, let's make Cuphead by playing other games. Like,
exactly.
There is no like, oh, I played StarCraft 2 and that's why Cuphead's, that makes sense. It's more like, oh, let me turn what was on TV, 100 years ago. Oh, interesting. There's this cartoon thing. Okay, what if I took that style and put it in the game, or worked around that? And even the animation, and probably I haven't played it either, but probably in the game mechanics are inspired how those characters were animated, how they worked, because they weren't, they didn't work as in how they worked in real life. If you an animal drops on your head, you're not going to survive that. So,
Yeah. Devious Oatmeal says the gameplay looks very simplistic. I don't know what I will feel when I play it. The art is amazing, fantastic, just yes. But I heard how hard the tutorial was. And there's a kappa at the end. And that's a little reference to Dean something something. I forgot his name. He's a very, very renowned game journalist. He's been in the field for like 20 years, and honestly, I know we shouldn't be talking about politics and blah blah blah, but I really feel that people were so unfair to this poor guy. Yes, he played really badly, but you don't have to be awesome at platformer games to be a game journalist. He's covered so many things. So yeah, that was it. Sorry.
yeah, it's okay. But yeah, this is an interesting lens. I think it's more like this lens is kind of hard to use if you haven't read the book. Again, it's one of these, like some of these lenses are very like you only start to grasp what he means if you read the book. We tried to bring it, to you guys so you would understand it, but there's a lot of nuance and detail that's going on in the book. So it goes on then with inspiration is one of the secrets behind the strongest games. But how can you turn inspiration into great game design? The first step is admitting you have a problem. And that brings us to the next lens, which is the lens of problem statement, which also goes back to, we had here a comment earlier. Let me read it, which I think, so Spectrum says, I have this discussion a lot with my game devs while making a game. They want crazy stuff in the game, but I need to push back a lot or the game will never be done or be a collection of features that do not work together.
Scope.
And how to manage scope. And he kind of goes into it during this next lens, which is the lens of problem statement. For me, lens 14, probably lens 10 for Tasty. To use this lens, think of your game as the solution to a problem. Ask yourself these questions.
That's lens 12 for me.
Oh, okay. What problem or problems am I really trying to solve? Have I been making assumptions about this game that really have nothing to do with its true purpose? Is the game really the best solution? Why? How will I be able to tell if the problem is solved? Defining the constraints and goals for your game as a problem statement can help move you to a clear game design much more quickly. And one of the things he also says here, bringing to that, is that when you define the problem, he says that it's easier to work in a team because you all are solving the same problem instead of separate problems. So communication becomes easier. And a lot of time when you have like conflicts and different opinions because you didn't do this part, you didn't, state it as a problem statement. But now the question is, what is a problem statement? So which one is already made? So here we, for example, have some examples. How can I make a board game that uses properties of magnets in an interesting way? How can I make a video game that tells the story of Hansel and Gretel? How can I make a game that feels like a surrealist painting? How can I improve Tetris? So it's kind of interesting. I do think it's hard though. It's hard to kind of, at least for me, this is probably the hardest part. I should try it sometimes to state my own game as a problem or like a problem statement. It's hard to escape a tower. No, that's not the thing I'm trying to solve. But I do think he's on to something.
It's hard to not get rescued.
Yeah, it's hard to get. What does a witch need to rescue themselves when nobody else comes and rescues you? And actually, that might lead to interesting thoughts. Already, I'm like peaked. I'm like, what would I answer to that? And when you start discussing in this way, when Tastygraph now comes up with a great idea, like, oh, she needs a crowbar. The feature he comes up all supports that problem statement, which unifies the features and things like that. So you're all trying to solve the same problem instead of separate problems.
Yeah. I'm not seeing myself using this lens as much as I should or could. I don't know. I mean, I think my main issue is probably that I have a hard time really understanding the purpose of this lens. I mean, I read it, I kind of understand it, but I don't. I think maybe I make really, really simple games and I rarely need to ask all these super advanced questions about them. It's like I have an experience and I kind of want to get that experience out, and that's it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this lens comes from the business world, because in business world you're always solving a problem. Like, oh, we have the IP of Pirates of the Caribbean. We have this technology called VR. We would like to make a ride around it, And then the problem statement is, how can we create the Pirates of the Caribbean experience in a VR environment?
That's a good point. The
And
business thing.
yeah, and I think that's where this stems from. Not saying it's bad. Not everything that comes from business is bad. And I do think that a lot of indies don't think this way. We don't come up, like some very artistic people do. Like when you have people who do art installation, they're like, oh, I would like to present a game in a museum. That means it needs to be in a physical space. Okay, how am I going to design a game around, people who attend museums? They only have, 2 minutes to play it, and then they're going to move on, and it needs to probably be tied to that theme, etc. So, but as an indie who main target is Steam, it's not very natural. For me, maybe one of the core problems I have for myself is like, I'm not like, I played, of course, a lot of like arcade games when I was younger and when I was older, but I'm not part of the very, very hardcore audience, because again, I live in Europe, in northern Finland. I didn't have the same experiences as someone who lived in the US. We had a much more PC oriented. So one of my problems is like, is kind of how to cater to that audience. What is that whole thing? And that's kind of what I'm also going through with The Witch, which is like, okay, what do people expect of these type of games? But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else. It's a very important thing. It's something I wish we could talk more about, but
Yeah,
like you said, it's hard.
we can. It's your show. We can.
Let's sit here and think for like
Yes.
hours. No, but I agree with you. I think most people will skip this if they work on their own game, and if they work without any kind of, how to say, like, not like their problem comes not from business. They comes from like, they just want to create. It comes from their need to create something, and then maybe the problem is just, how can I satisfy my creation process while earning money, which is the most like an impossible. It's not impossible, but it's close to impossible to solve. Anyway.
Yeah. Did you see in the chat, Flip13 says, I once came up with an idea for a game about a brainwashed princess that thinks she's on a mission to save a prince, and at the end finds out that she's the one that needs to be saved. It's kind of interesting because I can't really say the movie because that'll kind of spoil it, but there are a couple of movies that have that sort of plot twist. And in a way, you can kind of turn it around and put a lot of villains in the princess's place. Like if you see things from a villain's perspective in a story, then usually they're the ones that think they are out doing something good. So I like this idea where you kind of flip things on its head, like it's, as I like to call it, a plot twist.
Yeah, it kind of comes, and it also ties into the next points here in the book, and it's kind of the thing what I also look for in, like, when we have Ludum Dare games. The last one was running out of power was the theme, and then how do you interpret that theme? And personally, I love the themes that interpret it in a kind of a, they pulled something out of outside of experience again, and kind of created this totally different, like a plot twist in a way, how they interpreted the theme. And then the straightforward, which is like, oh, I played a lot of these type of games, like energy management games. I'm just gonna make an energy management game where running out of power is the theme, and then that is still cool, but it's not unique again. And that's why I always look out for, as a game designer, I get inspired by these weird games, which are more like pushing even the boundaries. Is it even following the theme or not?
Yeah.
Or it's following the theme in a very weird way. But also a good executed game is always good no matter what. Let's see here. I have some marks here. Let's see for what I'm saying. What he's saying here.
Zod, it says, the Empire did nothing wrong.
Exactly.
I think they did.
They did.
I'm not sure exactly which Empire he's talking
Hey,
about.
dude.
Maybe he's talking about Star Wars.
Look, TIE
Let's
fighter
just
right
pretend that he
here.
was in the German Empire.
Hey, dark side for life. I don't know. What is the gang side for dark side? I don't know. Should be one.
I think the gang sign for dark side is this.
Oh, this, yeah. Yeah, the light side. Those guys are the people screwing up everything. We're just trying to bring order to the galaxy.
Actually, I'm neither light or dark.
You're
I'm
just
a
an
huge
innocent
fan of
bystander.
the gray Force users,
Oh,
and I
really?
think we'll see a lot more of those in, or a development towards that in the new Star Wars franchise.
Yeah. Gray Jedi. Yeah. It would be interesting if they went that way.
Oh, I think
Again.
they will. I mean, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I know that after Disney took over, they did introduce more talk about the gray, like the neutral aspect of the Force, and kind of raising the question of whether or not maybe both the Siths and the Jedis are kind of wrong. And I like the idea of that, because the world is not black and white. You know, it's not like you can't have paladins and death knights rule the world. You kind of need people in the middle that can be human, basically.
He's seeing the stream with the delay now.
I'm seeing you doing some stuff with your hands, but I was too busy looking at my own camera feed.
Good.
Because I'm a narcissist.
Good.
Not.
So next subject he delves into is sleep again. It's the second time, I think. He really likes sleeping. He's my kind of man.
Yeah, he spends like 3 pages talking about Salvador Dali and the slumber with the key in the hand method.
Yeah.
I don't think it was really necessary, to be honest. But I don't know. I mean, basically it describes this sort of method where you sit in your chair and you kind of lean back, and then you have a key in your hand, and you kind of let your hands rest down the sides, and then there's a plate below your hand with the key in it, and then the moment you fall asleep, you drop the key and it lands on the plate and it wakes you up, and you get a heart attack, and then you get really good ideas or a quick trip to the hospital.
I think that part shouldn't be taken too literally. I think what he's trying to kind of explain is kind of the subconscious mind and different ways to delve into that, and everybody has a way usually. Like, you can do it through that way, or through meditation, or when you daydream in the bus, or daydream when whatever. They all work, and I think his biggest point is kind of not to kind of find those places in your life where you kind of let go, instead of always trying to struggle, like, oh, I need to make my game, oh, what should I do, oh, this is not working, and then you're always in a stress state, which makes only your logical part of your brain work. So giving this kind of space for the subconscious to arise, remember to sleep. Well rested, you're going to do much better work. Remember to eat. Without energy, you won't be able to function very long, or you function subpar. No matter what you think, you might think you're the most, you're like, oh, I'm working so much more when I'm not eating. But in the end, your quality of your work is like horrendous. And I think that's kind of what he's talking about. It's kind of like finding these quiet places in your life where, that's when like inspiration and things kind of boil up. When you kind of let go of yourself. And that's when he goes starts talking about the muse part that we've already been hinting at, is
Yeah.
finding your own muse, listening to that voice at the back of your head, no matter if it's male or female or whoever he is or she is for you. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's hard. You have to kind of work as a designer, for a period to kind of realize what he's talking about. I think if you would read this part especially, and you wouldn't like you're new to design, I think you will be have hard time kind of understanding what he's talking about. Like it just sounds like he's going on about dreaming and hallucinating and
Exactly. I mean, it's kind of that's one of these things where it gets very fluffy again, and it's not really. It I think a lot of people work that way, but I don't know. I mean, personally, I've never had problems coming up with ideas or finding inspiration. I've never really had a need for personifying my inspiration or my creativity. So I guess I don't know. I mean, I found it really, really hard. This thing about like spending so much time trying to find your magical friend, basically.
I don't
No,
think
and it's like,
I don't know if he means like you should spend a lot of time. I just think it's like every week find like 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And
yeah,
and I think for people who do it naturally, it's kind of like in a self-editing, like, oh, I don't know what this is talking about. Like it could even happen when watching TV. TV is one of the most meditative states for a lot of people. Just watching something and drool is coming out of your mouth, and you're like really not focusing on everything. And then when you go sleep, the next morning you'll be brimmed with ideas.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, for me, my most of my, I wouldn't say inspiration, but
mm.
I would probably call it clarity. Like if I have problems that I'm thinking about and I want to solve them, I usually just leave it and wait for the next day. I shower every day, and whenever I'm in the shower, I wake up in the morning, take a shower. Usually that's when I kind of think of, oh, I could try these 5 different ways of solving this or that. And so I think for him, sleeping or whatever his method is, that's what works for him. For Seed Pod Games, it's going to the toilet. It sounds like it. He says all great ideas come from the toilet. Hence, World of Goo was made.
It's actually funny because he talks about World of Goo in this book.
Oh, yeah.
But he says it didn't come from the toilet. It came from a piece of music the guy was listening to. I don't know, remember where it was. I
No.
can't find it right
We'll
now.
get to it
It
eventually.
was some classical music, a lot of things around that. So, and then, but then it changed throughout the process also or something. We'll get back to that later. But yeah,
Yeah, Seed Pod Games says, yeah, I take about an hour each day to meditate, sit around, think about the programming tasks, albeit laying down, shower, dancing, cleaning, working out, or just to take the hands off the keyboard, but keep the brain active on the task. Look at it different mindset, I guess. Think about being drunk versus sober, runners, high, etc. Different areas equal different thoughts, perhaps mindset. It's a way to not have the same thought process every time, so you can mix it up. Yeah, I mean, I would recommend for every person who uses their brain a lot every day, which is all of us in here, we all use our brain a lot every day. I really recommend meditating. And meditating is basically just spend 5 minutes to relax, try to think of nothing other than breathing in and out. It really, really can somehow revitalize your brain and kind of make you think a little bit differently when you're done meditating. And that's not magic. It's probably science that I don't know how to explain.
I think it even helps kind of like a lot of people who are creative or in the creative business kind of suffer from emotional imbalance. And what I mean with that is like, you get depressed, you feel like, you don't know anything, or like, oh, you don't know what to do or what to create, all these kind of things. Like you get kind of desperate, or like you kind of get lost. And I think kind of doing this meditation kind of evens that out. Kind of when you wake up from the meditation, and I don't think meditation as in like like a Buddha. It's just letting go of whatever you're working and doing something else, letting go. It kind of evens that out where you don't get like crazy highs or crazy lows. It's more even. And when you notice that you're having actually a crazy high or a crazy low, it's probably a good idea to kind of sit down, relax, take it easy, and then you'll open your eyes after that and you'll see things differently.
You could also just have a clinical diagnosis and a chemical imbalance in your brain, and then you need pills, and meditation is not really going to help.
Yeah, there's exceptions, of course.
Yeah.
If you start hearing real voices in your head and they drive you to do things you don't want to do, then seek professional help. But if you're normal, or normal is a hard word, but
Yeah.
if they don't tell you to do crazy things, then yeah, it's good to listen to your subconscious.
If your voices tell you to make games about witches that fall in towers, then, humor them. Listen to the voices.
No, then run before they
Fly,
put you in
you
a straight
fool.
jacket. But I do think like it's kind of not in this book, but I do think people who are on the verge of insanity a lot of the time are the best people at creating things.
Yeah.
I think also a lot of business people who are really good at business are kind of on the verge of insanity or like crazy. Like, and that the thing is, usually to create something that nobody else has created or is wildly out of reach for other people is because you were so crazy you didn't give up. Like where everybody who's normal would be like, okay, I'm gonna, this is too much for me. I'm gonna step away and I'm gonna go, to go and be a Walmart sales clerk instead. The crazy people are gonna be like, no, I'm gonna eat this sewage water and still so I can continue making games or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll mortgage my house to finish this endless runner.
And everybody else is gonna look at it like, oh, you're crazy. You're gonna lose your house and be homeless. And a lot of the time, that's what ends up happening.
Yeah. Oh, lots of stuff going on in chat.
Yeah.
Hey, incoming drawing. And Tribute 32OS said. Sorry, I butchered that name. And Rob the Decent. Welcome to Book Club.
Welcome. Zydabs, I never follow these streams. I never follow either. I just in them, sadly enough. And then I force also Tasty to be here.
Yeah, I'm actually here out of free will.
Yeah, don't tell them the real.
I hope that you have researched morsing. I am currently not morsing with my eyes. Please send help.
Yeah, we try to keep it, like, we try to explain all the things. I knew that following all the things we talk about is going to be difficult. And I think this book is kind of an intermediate / hard level. So don't feel bad if the things, like even if I follow the stream and I didn't have the book, I didn't read all these things, I'm going to find some concepts and things hard to understand. But I still think it's worth talking about them and discussing them on stream and listening to us, because in the end, at some point, they're going to go click. Like at some point, you're going to be like, oh, those two guys on a stream said something like this. Maybe this is what I'm experiencing now, or maybe this is the thing I need to think about. And then suddenly, you don't always understand everything instantly. Sometimes it's like it grows and, then an idea blossoms out of that or understanding. What is the topic of today? Oh, Zudabs, it's still the book. So we're going through books. So now we're going through ideas and how to create them. So should we go to the next lens before we're already 1 hour in, so. So the next one is, which one? I'm lost. Oh, we're here.
Zodid asks, is that book list below the stream in order of how you plan to go through them?
No, I don't think so. We're probably, after this book, we're going to do the book called Level Up. I think Tasty has a copy somewhere. It's
Yeah, let me just find it real quick.
it's a better book. If you're just getting started, I think it's more approachable and it has more practical advice. There we go. You can even see here, and it even has nice tabs so you can find the right place when you need them. Um,
Not on mine. Just saying, this is just part of the front page.
oh,
It
it's
just it looks like that, but it really doesn't.
there was a version that looks like that. Yeah, so that's going to be the
Maybe I
next one.
have the cheap version.
And for example, the book called what is it? Frontiers of Games, Game in the Frontiers, something like that, by Aki Järvinen. That's a person, not a thing. Uh, it's very scientific, and I think Tasty's head will implode, and my head will explode, and your guy's head is gonna, I don't know, swirl around. I mean, it's very academic. I just put it there for people who games without frontiers. That's the one. Um, my brain suddenly gave it to me when I didn't care about trying to remember it. So yeah, that's more very academic book. So if you've read all of these books, The Art of Game Design, and you're still thirsty for more knowledge, then I would say that's a good book to read. It goes even further and deeper into what is a game mechanic, what could it mean, and things like this. How to.
I know that Crytex is just saying this for giggles. He says, "I don't need books for beginners. I want to create a second GTA 5." Um, I know you're just joking, but the books that we're reading and doing these book clubs on, they're not really how to make a game. They're actually more how to design a game. And that's where there's a huge gap between game development, which is a very, very technical art form, and game design, which is a very, well, it's also a technical thing, but it's not as tangible. It's not like reading a book and then following through step A to B to et cetera, and then boom, game finished. It's a lot more fluffy.
Yeah. And the books only help put perspective on it. In the end, nothing beats experience and practice and life experience. And it doesn't even need to be in game design. It can be life experience. It can be anything. Some really great designers come out of nowhere because they just have so much life experience. They're just like, I want to make a game about climbing mountains and, hitchhiking or something. And then they just have this very deep insight into a thing. And no other game designer approaches it from that perspective. And then they create amazing games. Now he's gonna pull another book.
Yes, I am. I am going to pull another book because Crytek says, I know, Tasty. I read at the moment a book called A Theory of Fun, and it's the same type of book.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we're gonna go through that one too at some point.
This
Let's
book
go.
is very story based. This is very easy to read, and it's also very interesting to read the thoughts of Raf Kostner. He also has a blog. He's one of the guys who worked on Ultima Online and later did a lot of stuff on, I think it was Sony. Maybe I'm wrong. Doesn't matter. But he's a very, very he's an important figure in the game design world because he knows a lot of stuff and he has a lot of really cool stories that can or cannot help people that are new.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, why it's important. If you're gonna start this whole thing of reading books, it's good to read a lot of different books because everybody has their own perspective. They also have their own expertise in the subject. There are no like hard set rules in game design, and I don't expect there to be any. Like it all depends on how you approach game design. It's easier to see rules and very strict rules in movies, and those same rules do apply to game design. Like a good story arc is still a good story arc, but you might approach games can be approached where you don't even have a story and it's still a great game. It's more about maybe the interaction between players if it's a multiplayer game, and that's more interesting. And it's not even trying to tell a story. It's just trying to create interaction and interesting discussion, for example. Like, I don't know if, well, PUBG has a story, I guess, kind of, but it's actually more about interesting interaction between people shooting each other and surviving, but it gets gruesome.
Yeah,
But
the story in PUBG is about a class of students who are kidnapped and put on an island to fight against others. Oh wait, no, that's Battle Royale.
yeah, well,
Sorry.
that's what
It's just some
based on.
unknown Japanese movie from like 2001 or something.
No, I saw it. It can be very unknown if I've seen it.
I was joking. It's actually really, really famous. It's just that most people think that Hunger Games made up the whole Battle Royale thing.
Yeah, I don't think
And
it's
Battle Royale, the movie, probably didn't even make up that theme. I don't know. But
maybe not.
that's the first one I saw.
Yeah, same here. I think that if you're into those kind of things, you're gonna know about it, and then I bet most people won't. So yes, it's more rare. So should we go through the? I don't. Is there even any more lenses? So we had the lens of problem statement already, right? And I think that's the last one for this.
Yeah, my book doesn't have more lenses, but it goes through a lot of brainstorming tips.
Yeah, and we could cover them.
Well, 15. Sorry for hiccuping. 15 brainstorming tips.
I have 16.
Oh.
So I have one you don't
Okay.
know about. I'm never
You
gonna
do.
tell you guys. You have to talk about these, so I don't want to reveal it to you. You have to buy the second edition.
Plot twist. You have one that I know about and 15 that I don't know about.
Exactly.
And
Oh,
then
wait,
I
it's
have
not a way
14 that you don't know about.
Where's this going? But
A
yeah,
game of numbers.
maybe we go really fast through these, and maybe just stop on the ones that it again covers sleep. It's like he's obsessed about sleeping. I don't
Yep.
think he's realized it, but
He's very dark around the eyes here, so maybe he kind of really needs sleep.
yeah. A lot of the time, the advice you give other people is stuff you struggle with yourself. So maybe sleeping is one of his, like.
Yeah, you should all finish your games, especially your witch games. If you make witch games.
Finish? He hasn't talked about finishing anything. I will go on for the rest of my life. Imagine if you would build like a game, like basically like the Game of Thrones. His kind of his life journey that he just writes these books. Like, what if you made a game like that? You would just keep developing it and never reiterating. You just keep adding, and you do it for 50 years. That would be. Technology would even go forward. It's kind of weird.
So you're basically talking about a kind of like a game that just gets expansion upon expansion and feature and feature and feature forever.
I don't know. Like, imagine, like, there's this church. I know I'm going off topic a bit, but there's this church, cathedral in Prague, which is super cool because it's one of the, like, it took so long to build, like, art styles and kind of things change as it was built, and it wasn't built all at once. So you actually, when you go to the cathedral, I keep calling it church, it's a cathedral, like, it's huge, and every, like, 50 meters, like, I think there's at least 7 different styles. The whole thing, like the brickwork, you can see a hard line in the cathedral where they stopped, like they built for 50 years, then they stopped, then they built for 50 years and stopped. And you see these, it looks even newer, like cleaner at the newer parts. And
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. And I wonder, like, what if you did that with a game? Like, you would start playing the game, it kind of plays like Mario, and because that, whatever, let's say that's what it would be current when you started it, and then you develop at some point, it kind of develops into PUBG. Like, they would be the same game by not. Like, you would evolve the technology. Anyway.
We've not seen it so much with single player games, but we have actually seen it a lot in MMOs. And obviously we're not talking a time span of like 10 years or 5 years or 50 years, but there's a very, very good example of Star Wars Galaxies. When that game came out, it had a very specific style of progression. And one of the things about it was that if you wanted to become a Jedi, you had to, you basically had to find secret skill ups. and you would get these secret skill ups by exploring all the skills in the game. So you would literally, roughly speaking, you would literally max out a skill, grind it for weeks and months, only to realize that this was not the skill line that would give you the one of the 5 secret things. And eventually, they just said, screw it, we're just going to change our game and make it a little bit more World of Warcrafty. And everyone started their characters at, like, picking the class they wanted to be rather than how it was at the beginning. I don't recall what we called it. I think it was like the Great Patch or something, but basically that broke the game. It took the game and turned it into something completely different in terms of how you played the game. And we've seen that in MMOs, but it's not as common in normal games. The Witch Design Witch Club.
The chat is going crazy
Yeah,
with
I love it. It's awesome. The Game Witch Company.
Call of Witches.
Witch Fury, Street of Rage. No, just Street Rage. Sorry.
Jackbox Party Witches.
Infamous Second Witch.
Witch Owl. Darn witch design by Witch. There was something. Oh, actually, there is actually another example. Is Mario. You could say that is kind of the same game, just being, but it's not the same game. But it's different games. Like you see the Mario Classic to Super Mario World. N64 version, whatever it's called, Super Mario something, and now
I think just for a moment I can't focus now. I kind of died at Art of Witch Design by Witch Shell.
You died.
Yeah, I kind of died a little bit.
Are you a witch? Star Witch.
Red Dead Witch Demption.
Yeah, The Witcher. That's a very easy one.
Yeah, Rocket Witch.
Rocket Witch. These are all
Star Witch.
This is actually really good. Again, way to brainstorm. Like I'm very sure some of these would be amazing games.
Sid Witch's Civilization.
Sid Witches. Witchalization. Super indie witches.
Yep. Yeah, sorry. It's just there are a lot of really funny ones there.
There are. Like I had a hard time listening to. I was laughing trying not to laugh too much. It's like someone's watching the VOD and it's like, why is he going insane next to Tasty?
Yeah, we should almost have the chat somewhere in the
we could put it here. There's a lot of
window.
space. We will iterate the whole time the concept. So maybe we should put the chat up here so you can see it.
Yeah.
That way people can see what you got. Super Witch and Ghost.
Yeah, or maybe just squeeze the width of our cameras a little bit so that we could have space in the middle and have the chat run down there, and we're kind of both looking into the middle towards the chat. Maybe.
We are both holding the chat like this. Just witches too.
Maybe.
Grand Theft Witches. I like Grand Witch Auto.
Grand Theft Witches. The Switch. Overwitch.
Witch Theft Auto.
Tasty Witch. Company of Witches.
Final Witchery. Witch Fantasy.
Oh, Illusion of Witches. Super Nintendo edition. That is that the Mickey Mouse game?
Yeah, I think so.
Is there a game called Illusion of Mana or something like that? Which game is it? Which witch?
I don't know. You have to ask Spectrum.
Yeah.
World of Witches, Everwitch, Witches Online. I've been playing the SNES, the mini Super Nintendo all weekend, so there's so many good games.
Illusions of Gaia.
Illusion of Gaia. There we go. I don't think I played that one. So let's go forward.
Yep.
So we have the 15/16, depending. Different idea creation methods or things to make.
I know which one you're gonna bring out.
I'm gonna bring out the first one.
Oh. No, we don't want to. Do we really want to do them?
We don't need to read we don't need to go in depth, but we
Then
could just mention them.
I think you should pick the one that you feel is the most important.
Okay.
And I know which one it is.
Oh, I don't even know which one. I haven't thought about it.
Because you told me.
Oh, I forgot what I told you already.
The one about writing.
Oh, yeah.
Right, writing everything.
Okay. Yeah, I do. That is the most important one. I just have so many notes. I'm trying to flip through them all. Yeah. So for me, definitely writing down your ideas. So it's kind of like it's kind of not an idea generation in a way. It's more about documenting your ideas because you might as well have no ideas if you don't remember them in 10 minutes. So actually taking always a book. Like I actually have my book here. This is my book of ideas. I just write them down here and I don't really care. Like my my handwriting can be awful. They can have some weird pictures that are drawn like stick figures. It doesn't matter. Usually when I do that, I can go back to them and remember them. And it also, usually when I start writing, it helps me think about the next thing. So it never comes in like, if I don't write, I'll just have this one idea. No problem. And when I write it down, I'll have maybe 5 ideas and they build up on each other. Book of ideas. Yeah. And you don't have to be a book. Like even in this book, he says like use whatever works for you. Some people want to write it down or work with whiteboards. Other people like books. Other one writes in Post-its. Do find your way. So try all of these and see which one works for you. That's some big handwriting. Yeah, exactly. Like like look here. It's so big you could probably read it on stream. Like it's the thing is like it's more about just putting it like writing it somewhere than versus keeping very small font. And sometimes I also use it just to go through or concept in something, and then it looks more like what Tastygraph has there. Like
My
here you
book
can see
is
the same.
bigger than yours.
Exactly. I like small book because I can carry it with me.
I have small books too, but this is like my big one where I have so much stuff in it.
I like that
Also-
idea. I'm gonna steal it. I'm gonna pick it up right here, and now it's in my book.
Okay. Well, okay. Steal this. Hang on a sec. I'm gonna find it.
Is there a witch idea?
Steal this.
Ooh, I don't mind stealing that. That looks awesome. And he also talks about in this part is like it's not about only writing, also draw, like Tasty is showing right here. Draw things because it helps. It kind of again works with different part of your brain, and it might actually, it definitely is a method of kind of exploring idea and making it more concrete because instantly you have to put it on paper or put it in a medium. Also, mind maps are super great. It's gonna become something that you can actually use. And I know that there are a lot of people who are like, oh, I don't need to do that. I remember everything. I never write anything down. And trust me, 80% of your ideas are gonna get wasted. They're gonna be like I used to be like that. And it's not about my memory going worse. It's just that now that I write down, it actually becomes tangible. Ooh, monster. Plus, sometimes when you're like, I don't know where to go with my game, I don't know, you just open your book and you're like, oh, I like this. Oh, interesting. Maybe I'll use that. It might be even from a totally different game, even.
Yeah, I'll admit though, the majority of my book is like sketches and stuff.
Well, that's how you work, I think, right? Oh, he's upside
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, I like the sketches. Well, it's because sometimes I grab the book by the wrong side and I'm like, whoops.
But I think for me at least that's very important. Like mine goes also the wrong side up and upside down, and sometimes I write something like I don't even know what this is about anymore. But anyway, like sometimes I write upside down, and it doesn't matter. It's just more about grabbing something and writing it down, and I might never return to it, but I'll remember it instantly much better. Ooh, Animu.
Yeah, it's Animu from last year.
Oh, I didn't know you've done Animu. Hey, LCP
I do.
LGA, welcome to the Company of Game Devs, and cheers for the follow. You like Animu?
Yeah, I love Animu. I used to watch Naruto and Rurouni Kenshin, all of these like
Oh.
old animes.
Have you seen the
And
OVA?
Ninja Scroll.
Have you seen the OVA of Rurouni Kenshin?
One of them, aren't there like 3?
I think there's 3. It's like a one series of OVAs.
Yeah.
They definitely put a the whole Rurouni Kenshin story in a different perspective. I don't want to ruin it for everybody else, but it definitely changes the whole story and why he's doing things.
Duragon.
Duragon, that's awesome, dude. And that's the thing. You need to find your way. So if you're like, I don't have any way, that doesn't mean you haven't found it yet. And make a sweet ass visual novel. Yeah? Tons of gold one day. Well, let's hope so. Like, I'm really sure that Tasties, those are worth gold in like 10 to 20 years. They're gonna be, people are gonna be, well, not auctioning off yet, but
Well, I think
who knows?
that my main reason for doing a lot of these drawings is sometimes like I'll have a weird idea and I want to see it in action, like this axe, for instance.
Oh, that's definitely an interesting idea. Does he cast flames out?
Like
Here?
sometimes it's easier for me to draw something than write it out with words. Like for instance, I was doing a series of T-shirts at one point, and I wanted to have like a horror theme, but I also wanted it to be sort of cutesy wootsy, so I did stuff like this. And this is empty. So, you know, it's like there's Cthulhu and a werewolf and
that's awesome. I love that. You should make those shirts. Those need to go on a shirt now.
I have made those. I have
them?
the shirt with Cthulhu.
Well, there we go. I thought you said you were thinking about it, but you actually made it. That's awesome.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was thinking about how I wanted to do these things, and then I put them in and made them like that. So yeah. And then some of the sketches for when I was streaming the stuff with the animals that had jobs.
Yeah.
This is like a Professor Steampunky Lion guy. So sometimes my point is like you can get inspiration from all kinds of places. Like I think this was after a trip to the zoo.
Oh.
And I just, you know, sometimes you need to try stuff that doesn't make sense just to see if it makes sense or not.
He even talks about that in the book again to bring it back. Like sometimes you get ideas like, oh, his example is like, oh, let's make a surfing game. What if they were surfing bananas? What if there were monkeys surfing bananas? And I think that's very important to embrace that. Even if you then later on be like, no, that is not a thing. You need to embrace those and really give them value. Ooh, he kind of reminds me of Skeletor.
Yep.
In the pond.
He is very Skeletor-like. Because he has like the skull head. And
the difference between your book and mine is that people are going to find your book and think you're a creative genius and all these amazing, cool drawings. And they're going to find my book and then look at all my games and be like, this guy's a madman. What is he even talking about here? He's going rampaging. Did you know? And then they're going to start drawing all kinds of wrong conclusions about what I thought about when I made the game. Like, add lizards. Oh my god, lizards are the master race of the universe. And then everybody's opinion of me is going to change.
This book is primarily a sketchbook for me, where I also put game ideas, but I have sketchbooks. Let's see. Idea books. I have some where it's primarily ideas. Yeah. But I really haven't used those in a long time. So a lot of the ideas are from like 2000-ish up until 2010 or so.
Yeah.
And there's one particular idea that I was really excited about back at that time. And that was basically taking Super Mario, kind of like that mechanic, but mixing it up so that you had sort of 2 different play styles. That was back when I wasn't really that smart. Because it's not a good idea to have like a platformer game one level and then the next level you have a shoot 'em up. and then you switch back to platform, and then it's a shoot 'em up, because essentially you're alienating two different groups of fans who won't be happy with the other level styles and stuff. But
Well,
I
it depends on how you make it. Like, for example, Crypt of the Necrodancer, which um, I think you played, right? It kind of mixes two genres, like rhythm-based games and kind of roguelike dungeon crawling together. And if you can make it work, but they can't be like two separate modes. Like you have two different games that are just glued together sparsely. And maybe now
yeah,
it'd be interesting if you go back to those ideas, like your old ideas. How would you do it now that you are experienced? Like, have you made games, and
I
maybe
would
you would tackle it that way.
I would take the platformer aspect out of it and keep it as a basically, it's a shoot 'em up, but you're riding a dragon and you're using magics. And I think the main mechanic was the fire breathing thing, where you hold the button down to kind of breathe in the fire, and then releasing it to spew it out. But it never really got anywhere, because I did research and I saw that there were a lot of similar games, and at its core, it was just a bullet hell shooter, you riding a dragon, and I liked dragons in 2001.
What? You don't
I
like
still
dragons anymore?
I still like dragons, but I guess not as much.
So, what is your favorite one here?
My favorite brainstorm tip is, well, I have two, and I'm kind of torn between them. One of them is like,
Sleeping?
I'll take two. So I'll start with number your lists. Much of your brainstorming is going to consist of lists, and basically this rule is just that if you add numbers to your list, it's going to feel more significant, and it's also going to make it easier for people to reference stuff. Like I really liked rule number 3 and point number 5 and point number 8 versus just ... So for me, that was kind of an eye opener, because I'm usually very sort of meticulous about things, and I would originally use dots because it's like numbers signify something else, but I've kind of used it for a while now with numbered lists, and I feel that people receive them differently. So that's one that I like.
Well, they have a meaning, right? And that's the
Mm,
thing. Like, there is a meaning if you put something number one, you want it or not. It's like you can't put it as number one and not think about it, even at least subconsciously, and but not forcing you necessarily to think about it. But you will still think about it. It's kind of a, you know, it's gonna have some significance. What is the order? And I think it's gonna help you with scope and things figuring out as you go.
yeah,
Even if you're not intentionally doing it in the beginning, you could just be like, oh, I'm just gonna put this as number one. But over time, it does, like when you go back to that list, or if you at some point start analyzing that list, it's gonna be a reason. And then maybe you find something new. You're like, oh, I put that number one because actually that is the main theme, or that is the main mechanic I actually want. And everything else I wrote down here are just crazy ideas that I just put there because I tried to make it unique or something. And then like, oh, maybe I just make the number one and number two, and everything else I'll save for another game. I think that's another tip. Just because you don't use an idea now doesn't mean that you can't use it later. So if there's some idea you really love, don't feel like you have to use it on your current game. A lot of the time, they might actually work later on. So save all your ideas. They might come in handy later. I don't think he
yeah.
talks about that here, but he's talked about it earlier in the book, I think.
Well, he kind of does, because he says, write everything down. He also has a tip that's like, be ready to kill your darlings.
Yeah.
Don't obsess over something. If other people in your brainstorming session kind of want to go in a different direction, then don't cling on to the stuff. Try to be a union of people that are there, rather than people competing to getting your theme picked or whatever. My other favorite one was number 13, mix and match categories. Basically, you use the elemental tetrad, so you have technology ideas, mechanic ideas, story ideas, and aesthetic ideas. And you put your different ideas when you're brainstorming into these categories, and then you just go crazy. You'll pick like something from technology and something from mechanics and some random stuff from story ideas and random pick from aesthetics, and you'll end up with a game console game thing, which is about trying to spread rumors about other people, set in a TV star thing. You're a TV star, and then all the characters are animals. I don't know how that would work, but basically you take stuff from all of these ideas. Obviously, I was just randomly picking from the book, but that's the thing, you know. If you put your stuff into categories based on the elemental tetrad, then technically you can mix and match these things. You know, it could have just as easily have been a handheld game where the winner makes the most friends, set in a hospital, and it's Animu style.
Yeah, we could show the list, for example, here.
Yeah.
Sure. I'll try to give it a good. Where does it start? So technology ideas, mechanic ideas, story ideas, and aesthetic ideas. Sorry, you probably didn't have time to read it, but you can kind of get an idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So the point is, when you do your brainstorming, you categorize things, and if you make sure to take stuff from each of the 4 elemental tetrads, then you can. It could become a game. We're not saying it's going to be an awesome game, you know, like.
Yeah.
But it could, and it could give you an idea of something you never thought of, that you never thought of combining, and that is why that is one of my favorite brainstorm tips.
Yeah. I want to highlight a couple of from here too, more. Maybe not important for me, but I think they have good points. For me, number 5, change your perspective. The whole point of the lenses in this book is that they get you looking at your game from different perspectives. But why stop there? Don't just brainstorm sitting in your chair. Stand up on your chair. Things look different up there. Go to different places. Immerse yourself in different things. Brainstorm on the bus, at the beach, at the mall, or in the toy store while standing on your head. Anything that sparks your imagination and makes you think of new things is worth doing.
Yeah, I like that one too.
And then there's, which is for me 13, and it's probably not 13 for you, which is destroy your assumptions. I learned this excellent tip from designer Rob Daviau. I don't know how to say that, but Daviau.
I'm not sure I have that one.
Okay, I'll read it
all.
down. Make a list of everything about your game that you're assuming to be true. Such as, I assume that it is designed to be played indoors. I assume that players will look at the screen. And I assume the players only uses one finger to touch the screen. This can be a long list because we assume so much. Once you have a good list, go through each item and think about how your game would work if the assumption wasn't true. Most of the time the assumption must stand, but once in a while blowing up one of your assumptions will give you a great insight. Rob says he arrived at design for Risk Legacy when he considered destroying the standard board game assumption, one game does not affect the next one. So that's another thing. I don't know if you had that one.
I don't have that one, but that's very. I think it's a very good thing to keep in mind, because I think a lot of us here are kind of guilty of that as well. It's like you have a game and then you're making a sequel, and
Yeah.
it's the same but a little bit more, just like more features. Does it really warrant a new game? You know? And so I think it's a good idea to try to not assume too much, or at least look at what it is that you assume and then try to change that up.
Yeah, I think
Like with the game.
You're all like everybody's in a way at some point guilty of this. One thing I find that most people are guilty at some point is thinking people read text. The assumption that if I'm going to put 6 billion light years of text here, people are going to be, intrigued and want to know about the backstory, and then they're going to read about the tutorial for 5 hours. Where the reality is, people, if it's more than 5 words, going to skip your text in many cases. So
Yeah.
it
If it's
also,
me, I'll skip if it's more than three.
yeah. So I think it also works in that way, where sometimes you also find fallacies, like in your assumption. Like once you write it down, you're like, I assume that this is how it works, or this is what's gonna happen. And then you actually look at even your own game experience, like, oh, someone threw a lot of text at me, I actually skipped it. And you're like, oh well, you might remember, like, oh, when I was a kid, I loved this one game where there was a great story and I was reading like a whole lexicon of things, but that's an exception. It might be exceptionally good text, or it might be, your patience, or the venue where you did it was in a different place. Like if you're playing a mobile game, you're running around, trying to get to the bus or waiting for a bus to arrive. You're not gonna read a lot of text. So I find that very. I do think that. Well, he used it here to show kind of how you can come up with a game mechanic or a game idea. So, for me, it's more
Yeah.
about a later stage thing where maybe later in the game design I do kind of, especially if I run into a problem. This is kind of a thought process I use myself a lot. Is when I have something and I need to solve something, like, oh, this is a problem. People won't find this, or people don't find this, like it shows in the stats. Then I'm like, then the first question, do they even need to find it? And then if they do, and blah, blah, blah. So you go through all the assumptions, because a lot of the time we put in stuff in games or in whatever you make, and we just assume it needs to be there even. And in reality, it might be that you could actually remove it fully.
Yeah. It's kind of relevant to what you just talked about. Box Monkey says, isn't that know your though? And I think that was in reference to the text not appealing to everyone. And yeah, but honestly, I would say we're probably talking about like 2% of people who play games who are interested in having forced text upon them, because that's kind of the important thing here. Is like, if we're talking about a tutorial or intro of a game or something, then it really doesn't matter what kind of audience you have. You don't want to throw a book in their face, but you can put it as lore in, say, Skyrim or similar games where the player can actively go out and look for information in text. He says, but if that's your audience, then the 2% matters. The thing is, you don't make a game for 2%. You really don't. You could, but it's just not going to be. It's not going to be a good game in the sense that it won't appeal to many people. And let's face it, nobody makes a game 2 to 3 years for such a narrow segment when the solution could be fixed more easily. Like if you have a tutorial, there's no reason to give them a book or a manual or whatever. Science has shown that people learn better in a different way, or at least like the 7 other learning styles learn better from not getting a book in their face.
And you actually
But
can,
I get
if
what you're
it's
saying, Box Monkey.
if it's story, that's fine. Like if you're really targeting for people who want to read story, then yes. But running very like a manual on how to play the game is almost never the reason. Also, I see people using that as a crutch, where when kind of challenged, right, they will be like, well, I'm making for people who want to read a whole, manual like this thick to be able to play the rudimentary game. That's exaggerating a bit, but still, like, I'm making for that game. But then when they actually pitch the game, they don't mention it at all, which means that they're just don't know any other way of making it, which is harder sometimes to admit that, like I didn't know how to make tutorials for the longest time, but admitting that is hard, especially as a game dev, admitting that you don't necessarily know a better way or come up with, or you feel like it's too much work. It's stuff that people don't want to talk about. And then it's easier to just say like, well, I'm just designing the game for that. And, instead of actually tackling the issue. And sometimes it might be a, easy solution if you just spend the time looking at how other games have solved it. There's so many ways you could do that, which, Some of them are very, very like simple, like doesn't take at all a lot of time, and other ones are more intricate, of course. So choosing how you teach your player to play games is hugely important. But like here's an example where Divinity 2 has a lot of text and you're not forced to read it. It has a lot of voiceover. I think also that voiceover helps a lot. And the game is about reading stories and dialogue, so in that dialogue is fine to read and it's well written. It's not written in a haste or in 2 seconds. It's people who are professionals. There's a huge difference between well and badly written text. That said, I'm very sure that Divinity doesn't use huge amount of text to teach how to play. Maybe they do. I don't remember. At least in Divinity 1. Yeah, but that's
I
the
think
kind of thing.
most games tend to teach the player how to play because you really can't assume that players know that, WASD or whatever, what kind of
No,
movement
no, no.
it is.
I'm just trying to think,
So
how did they do it? I mean, not if they did. I'm very sure they did.
the first game was something about slowly walking through a combat encounter and being told you can do this to trigger that thing. And as far as I remember, you could only really do that one thing that the game wanted you to do. Like you had to cast a spell to learn it, and you had to move to there to learn how to walk and stuff. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's how the first game was. That's how I remember.
Yeah, I remember something similar, but I don't remember too well. But
Yeah.
also writing a lot of text for yourself. Like you could write it down for yourself. How do you play the game for yourself to help you understand it? That's fine. That's a totally different thing than presenting
Yeah.
it to the player that way. I don't write that much. I'm not a writer, but I do come up with backstories for the Witch game that I'm not probably putting that up on the game itself at all. Like maybe if you watch the streams, you're gonna hear me talk about it, but otherwise it's like it's gonna be told through the experience of the game. Like you might be like, oh, what's the reason he chose to do these things? And it's because of that story. And then I hope it comes through the experience. That's just how I develop games because I'm not really I write my stories through experiences personally, not through text. That said, like I read a lot of books. There's amazing people who can write stories with text that are hugely amusing and fun to read. But yeah,
You could add in backstory in the form of paintings. Like when you enter the shop, there could be a painting, and it's a randomly selected painting every time you enter the shop, and you could go and click on it and get a little bit of voice acted story or something. Like this is yada yada, the grandfather of the princess witch, and he liked pizza and lasagna or something.
I'm just gonna take that. You just made it. I'm just gonna steal that voice clip, and then that's gonna be the game.
Well, I'll be happy to voice it. I just need to fix my microphone first so I get the proper mic back.
Yeah, but a lot of the time, like there's different levels of like how like literal. Use that word. How literal you want to do it. Like you can use text is maybe the most literal, and then you have voice, and then you have just having a painting. Like let's say just a painting of an old guy smoking a pipe, and you're like, who's that old guy? No other explanation. To where there's just a game mechanic where that tells a story. Like maybe she has this spell or power because of a reason, and then sometimes leaving, and then you have to as a designer design what level you want to do it, because sometimes I personally find more pleasure in abstract, like where it's like I can build my own assumption of what it is. Like why does she have a hat, or why doesn't the witch have a hat, for example? She doesn't have it in my game. Why doesn't the witch have a hat? And Tasty's gonna come up with his own thing while playing. Maybe there's some pictures with her hat on, and then it's like, okay, what is this about? And then some people will play it and not notice at all, and that's fine.
Well, I know why she doesn't have a hat.
Because I'm too lazy to draw it.
That's because she's very vain. As you can see in the game, there are a lot of paintings of her in the castle, and she simply does not want to ruin her hair.
That's true.
Mystery solved.
Exactly. And that's the story Tasty is built instead. And the real truth is I'm just too lazy to draw a hat. And I don't know what type of hat she would even have. I would have to consult a hat expert. No. But, I mean, this is the kind of thing I enjoy. People will have different interpretations. And you need to decide, is that something you want or not? because sometimes also just the literal saying this is how it is very enjoyable. Like there's a lot of things you don't want to be like left for assumption. She's an undercover witch. We give her away.
Yeah. The viewers have a lot of really good suggestions of games that show a backstory without kind of pushing it on you. I'm seeing Assassin's Creed and World of Warcraft and Dark Souls or Donkey Kong Souls. It says DK Souls. Dark Knight Souls.
Dark Knight Souls. Yeah.
Dark Souls is DS.
It's okay. We will forgive you, Flippo.
We forgive you, Flippo. Is okay.
But yeah, I mean, these are all okay, and but definitely, like we had a big, like I played the Funner Runner, and he had by Honest Dan, and he had tutorials there, and we discussed that too, and he did a lot of work to try to make it better, and I think he was still revising it, and that's how it is in games. It's just you need to keep iterating, you keep looking at it. Instantly, you're just like, you know, I'm just putting a heap of text here or whatever, and I just not bothered. It's gonna affect your players hugely, and most of the time negatively. Sometimes it can be an interesting thing, but thank you for your forgiveness. Yeah. This is Pac-Man right here, also. Right there, Pac-Man.
What? Where?
I'm just waiting for someone to get pissed off again. Pac-Man?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was like, what are you talking about? But that's because I'm kind of delayed with the camera. But yeah, that's a Space Invader.
Space
Again,
Pac-Man.
we blame Bjorn's parents for never giving him a proper video game
Exactly.
when he was a kid.
That's why I have to make my own.
Yeah.
And another thing I actually still want to pull out from the idea creation, which is kind of, when you read it, it doesn't really pop out, but which I still think is valuable, is he says brainstorming tip number 4 for me, which is toys, like playing around with Play-Doh and Legos and stuff like that. I think that's something like more game designers should consider, is looking at toys, because a lot of the greatest games are excellent toys. Like you could remove all the mechanics and kind of, well, not mechanics necessarily, like you still need to be able to do actions, but like you could remove the whole goal of the game and whole rule set and everything, and it's just in the end just a fidget spinner that's fun to play around with, you know. It's not necessarily a game, and that's why like looking at toys, like even fidget spinners, which I use as a triggered, people are gonna get triggered for that example, but like, you know.
Yeah, but it's the tactile experience of it that I think is really important. Like,
Exactly.
you know, Bjorn, you sometimes sit with a deck of cards and you'll mix them up. It's the tactile experience that kind of triggers something in your brain that will let you come up with new ideas. It's just, I mean, it is, theoretically. I do the same. I have this thing here. Hang on a second.
Oh, now people went there. Oh, play
It is a Hearthstone squishy thing.
Does it teleport you anywhere? Where's your
No.
home? Your true home.
But I don't know. I just sometimes when I need ideas, I'll say that.
But it's not only about
Squeeze it.
like, I think
How I
like,
get so strong hands.
like stress toys are fine too, but I also mean like looking at the toy and pulling ideas from the toy, because most of the great games, the mechanics are so well polished and so great. What does it say? It's blurry. Can't read it at all. Still not. You have to pull it back. Bit more. Playhearthstone.com. Commercial.
It's kind of
We're
weird
not
because I never
sponsored by
really
Blizzard.
played the game. I didn't like it.
I played it when it came out, but I always like that. I always start playing something and I'm like, I'm going to become a esports professional in this, and then 2 weeks in I'm like, I want to go back to making games, and then everybody's better than me in after like 2 days. Well, even from the start, because people play the beta. But I think it's not only like, yes, distraction, having toys to play with and stuff like that, and that's great. I like this one too. I don't play with it, but it's Control C, but it's an eraser which you can actually use, which is undo. Um,
That's cool.
I have it here, but it's a bit dusty because anyway.
Oh no.
I'm dead. No, but I think also like sometimes if you design just a toy, like as a designer, just design a toy as a digital toy, and then make it out a game, it actually might, like, a lot of the time it's when a game just has, like, I think Blizzard games have that quality a lot of the time where it's not, it's almost toy-like, their things when you interact with them. Like, it's just fun to move around units in StarCraft. It's just fun to do the action, even if it doesn't have a rule or a goal. And I think that's something that a lot of designers could learn from. Is even myself, I'm not an expert at it yet. I try, is really looking at it also just from a perspective of a toy. Seeing
And
like
that
that.
actually
Yep.
that actually goes back to the lens of surprise.
Yeah.
The thing that you're talking about with Blizzard, where it's fun to move around, but also just like moving, the character says something randomly. Clicking the character, it'll say something, and if you click it enough, it'll get annoyed and say something entirely different. And I remember, with in particular Warcraft 3, this was something that me and my friends, we would talk to each other and we'd be like, have you tried clicking this unit a lot? Do you remember what it says? And we'd be like, we would literally walk around and say these things to each other. And that's very, very much part of like the lens of surprise, because it's like, does it give your players ways to surprise themselves? Does it give your players ways to surprise each other? They'll share these things. And yes, Blizzard is very much the ruler or the kings of that particular thing. A lot of other companies are catching up now, but they were, I mean, we're talking like 93 or 94 or something when Warcraft came out. It was, I hadn't seen anything like it, clicking a sheep until it exploded.
I think those are like the surprises, and they're kind of like, even in Hearthstone, you can click the environment and you can just like and play around while you're waiting. And it's not just that what makes them great. It's not just the surprise, and not just the surprise you can share. It's kind of like what the young audience would call a meme. It's something you can share. It's something that kind of, it's a shareable moment that everybody has experienced in the game. It's so small, but it's significant. Like, I've done the same thing where, from StarCraft or Red Alert or whatever of these games, you share those, affirmative, and then everybody who's played them is like, oh, I know that, and then it goes back and triggers that memory of it being fun playing, and then you have this shared experience of knowing, which is also the same thing with memes. Is like, if you know what the meme is from or what it's about, like you see a kappa, you're like, that's just a ridiculous face, I don't understand anything. But once you've used kappa enough, people create these as like, it's kind of, when someone puts kappa in chat, it flashbacks to all my sarcastic comments or cool comments I had in the past, and then brings forward kind of a meme-ness, I guess you could call it. And I think that's something that a game should do. It's very important. And they are usually the small things. They're not the main things.
And also stuff like pop culture references, just like make the player feel smart for the kind of fan service that you're providing. And we're not talking like anime fan service. So calm down, incoming drawing. Calm down.
Now you make me want to make like the One Punch Man pose for the witch.
Yeah, well, go for it. I mean, these are the kind of things, like, I mean, it's really, really silly, but people like that stuff. You like it. I like it. Generally, people like those things, even though it's kind of silly. So sometimes don't take yourself too seriously. Like, I had a puzzle game where, you had different levels of combos, and there was like if you had 5 levels of combo, it would say good, and if you had 10, it would say great, and then it was like super and super awesome, and eventually if you got past like 50 combos, it would say Chuck Norris. And it was so stupid. I had people upvoting my game saying, you get 5 out of 5 because it said Chuck Norris. And then I had people playing the game because they wanted to reach Chuck Norris level.
Yeah.
It was so weird because it was just a joke. I just put it in there because, like, okay, what's better than incredibly super awesome? Chuck Norris, I guess. He was really popular back then.
Yeah. I think it's, of course, especially when you make your indie games, you can do to your heart's content, and you should also do when you do professionally. But when you do professional games in bigger companies, you have to also take in consideration when as an indie developer, I make stuff that I can just put anything. I could put Chuck Norris in the Witch game because I like it. Probably my audience will like it because I'm making it for that type of nerd, right? Otaku.
Yeah.
And
Well, you could just call him Rock Norris, and people couldn't complain about it.
well, it's not about that, but you need to be a bit careful depending on where you're making game. If you're making game at Blizzard, you can still have them, but you have to cater to that audience. So audience always goes into there. Like if I put an anime reference in a game that's not played with anybody who knows about anime, it's gonna be the weird thing. People are just gonna be like, I don't know what that's
true.
from. Like Chuck Norris, it's like you imagine if it said just like, what could be a name? Adrian Fowler or something. It's like the most amazing level is Adrian Fowler, and you're like, I don't know who Adrian Fowler is. Maybe I need to Google who that is.
Rock Morris.
I like that. That should be a playable character. No, that would be awesome, dude.
It's just, but this is the thing, It's like it's easy to come up with stupid ideas and silly ideas.
I think that's
you write them down, and then maybe in some RPG or something at some point I'll have like a stone giant or something, and his name is Rock Morris, and he used to be really awesome. He used to be like a ranger or something, like you put in these stupid references that they'll work even if people don't know where they're coming from. But if people know where they're coming from, that is kind of the surprise. It's an Easter egg or whatever, but it will make people feel a little bit smarter because they caught it. It makes people feel special when you catch.
One of my favorite moments, personally, is in Fallout 2, I think. Fallout 2, where if you go and you have a random encounter, if you have enough random encounters, I don't know what triggers it, but it's kind of random. You might meet the knights who say "neat," and they have the holy hand grenade and stuff like that. So if you're like a Monty Python fan, you're gonna know what those are about. And actually, you can acquire the holy hand grenade, and it's crazy powerful. Fighting it with real, I would say Rock Morris would be awesome. Like he would be an ex-ranger, but he had to stop because he became a rock monster, and he can't be silent in the forest anymore. Actually, a lot of games also use side characters this way. So you make the side character kind of a fan service versus also not only like you don't have to make the main character that also depending on the style of the game. People like Google, so giving them a thing to ring bells. Yeah, there's actually a thing even in science, like if you go into e-learning and like education and educational games, there's a thing called let me remember what it's called. Anyway, I can explain it instead because I can remember. Tangential learning, which means even in, for example, if you just play Final Fantasy, you might know Sephiroth. Sephiroth is the name of a character, but it's also a real world thing. So more people in the world now knows what Sephiroth is because there's a character named Sephiroth. Yeah, tangential right, learning. So meaning that you can actually even learn and teach people things just by naming characters. Because when you Google Sephiroth, you're going to find the actual factual thing. Well, you're actually probably going to find a lot of Final Fantasy things first because it's more popular. But, CP, no, don't go there.
Sephiroth.
both. I don't know how to. But yeah, Libras, the Pebble, Jet B, John Claude Van Damme. Oh yeah, the Van Damme thing.
Van Damme.
The Van Damme thing they used in what's it called, Sense8, the Van Damme bus. Anyway,
Oh,
I don't know if
cool.
you've seen Sense8. It's actually quite a nice
No, I
series.
haven't.
Anyway, I think we've covered. Well, we have covered now the chapters we set out to go through. We didn't go through all the tips, but you can get the book. The link is below if you're more interested. If you're struggling for ideas. And yep, he has the first edition and the second edition looks like this. Both are great books, so if you can borrow one from a library. But if you buy, I would still recommend getting the second edition just because it has more information. But if you only can get your hands on the first edition, don't feel like you're missing out on a lot of stuff. Thus far, there's only been one chapter difference, which was major, which was the lens of the venue. So instead of thinking of platforms, thinking about the venue, where people are playing, because that usually doesn't change, because it's kind of part of our culture, and that didn't discuss in the first edition. Giveaways? No, we don't. Game-based learning? Yeah, the game-based learning is totally different then. But you can the idea with tangential learning is just you can teach people, even just like civilization is probably the only reason I know anything about history, because my history teacher was terrible, and that was the only thing that made me interested and made me Google stuff and read stuff on my own.
So, the solution to problems is have a bad teacher and look it up yourself.
No. Or not. It's more about, even if you make your game, you can still teach people even if it's not an educational game.
Yeah.
Like my which game teaches about physics, how you can jump off a building and still survive.
And break bricks with pink fireballs.
Don't jump off any buildings, guys. You won't
Unless you can fly.
No, even though you can't fly, guys, except if you're in an airplane. Or have like one of those gliders.
Yeah.
I use this right now. Let's see. Does anyone have a good idea to advertise my app for free? Anything that's free. This is a general rule. And there might be exceptions again, but that's minor, like that, or based on luck. Anything that's free, it's a huge amount of work. Like, you could probably get, free advertising by just walking around people with a phone and meeting them one-on-one and showing it to them, but you're going to be very slow. Or, if you're going to go through social media, you can write great posts, but you have to build a following and create all kinds of things. So if it's free, it most probably requires a lot of work. That's my tip. So if you want something free, be prepared to put a lot of effort into it, and don't get surprised when, when you're suddenly like, oh, I'm so exhausted because there's so much work. That's what it is. If you pay, it's super easy. You get, even social media example is easy. You can just pick a target audience and then Facebook will do all the hard work for you.
Yeah. I mean, I really think that it's worth it to spend money to try to pay for advertisement, because it's not that easy. That's a skill like everything else. And you can't just I've started a Facebook group and people are going to come. No, they're not. Because everyone has these things. So you really need to kind of get it out there and have it spread by people who have a lot of followers and whatnot. And even then, it's not a guarantee. So you got to pay.
If you wanted something for free, even if you pay for your advertisement, I would say that one tip I can give is, basically a bit what I'm doing is be open with your processes and be open about what you do and share what you do and do it naturally as it happens. And that kind of makes it easier, even if it's a lot of work. So, but of course,
really
don't let it
just create a community.
Exactly. And of course, it's still going to be a lot of work, and especially if it's not aimed towards making your game. Like, definitely, for example, this Game Design Book Club, is more of a service for all game designers and game developers. It's not gonna help me advertise my game in any way, but I still think it's worthwhile. And that's what you need to think about is like, what are things you can do that you would anyway do, but you just make it more open. So, every day you develop, you share a screenshot on social media. Doesn't take a lot of work, but people will notice, and you might get a bit of followers. It's not gonna make your game a huge success, but that's the closest to free you can get.
And if that doesn't work, just follow Flippo's advice and start a mobile repair company, and then put your game on people's phones.
Yeah. You should talk about your game everywhere you go. If you have a day job, talk about it there. And of course,
Yeah, but don't install it on people's phones. No. Don't be like, "Can I borrow your phone for a sec?" and then put it on their phone.
Yeah,
that's not a good idea.
You're not gonna get real traction that way anyway. People are gonna be like, "What the hell?" and delete it or play it. Like, you're not gonna get the attention you deserve. It's gonna be annoyance, and people are gonna attach negative feelings towards your game.
As an indie, I feel that one of the really, really strong ways marketing your game is to do what Bjorn says: have a community, be open about your process, have a following months or years before the game is out, because there's also some sort of like a pride and ownership for people to say, yeah, I backed this game like 2 years ago. Yeah, I've been following this game for 2 years. It's like part of that vain hipster culture coming through with gamers as well. We're like, yeah, I was in the beta. It was really good. Now it's not so good anymore, but I was in the beta. You'll have people share it.
Yeah. I think Spectre say, ask YouTubers, Twitchers to help spread the word. I think world. I was like, whoa, what? Not the world, but the word. I mean, you should do that when it comes out, no matter what, but don't have great expectations. Well, we even looked at ownership stats. Getting a lot of, even if you have a big YouTuber, play your game doesn't necessarily convert directly to sales. It may be indirectly. It might actually convert better to your community if you have a strong one. And the other thing is, like, remember, YouTubers, there's only so many who have a lot of following. And, there's so many game developers. So let's say everybody submits their game, they're going to get thousands of submissions. Like, when I do the give feedback, I've gotten like, over almost 500 now games. So those guys are giving in more, especially if they have enough to actually impact sales. So don't have great expectations around that. You might get lucky.
Flippo has another great suggestion. I really think you should put it into a list, Flippo, and make a blog post or something about it, because it is actually kind of funny. He says, play your own game in public places and overreact how much fun you're having with it. And I thought that was funny.
Yeah, I like that too. Hyperman, sup, dude? I already have fire up on 5k Insta followers, but no one clicks my links. Yeah, Instagram is not great for clicking. But if people don't engage with your post, think about what you're posting. Is it interesting for your followers? And if you can improve that, like, I find that if you post actual content and actual discussion, people will respond to it more than if you just do like advertising. So, me sharing my lighting system in the Witch game is gonna get more interaction than if I say, hey, my stream is live now. Yeah, I would say there was someone who said, and I think this is a good rule of thumb, you need at least 1,000 followers in like for the game, and doesn't mean like 1,000 Insta followers if they're not like really reacting, but you need to get a community with 1,000 followers, and that's when you have a good chance of spreading the word for free. Again, I think I even last stream, I keep repeating myself, but I guess it's worthwhile. Is like, I see these kind of things, especially when we talk about the free and word of mouth. It's like nuclear physics project, like you're trying to make a nuclear bomb, if you don't reach critical mass, meaning like enough initial, words going around, then it's not gonna explode. This is gonna be worthless. It's just gonna be like, nothing's gonna happen. It's gonna be a dud. So and that's why building these kind of communities, being part of communities, you don't have to build it yourself necessarily. You can create a community within a community. But having people who are interested in your game, interested in what you're doing, is gonna build towards that critical mass, so that it doesn't guarantee it's gonna become a viral thing or anything like that, the word of mouth. But if your game then actually is good, you're more likely to actually get that. So it's kind of like one of those requirements.
That's also one of the reasons why I recommend stuff like Thunderclap, because I've seen some people using Thunderclap, and it did give some sort of a measure of success, and I think it has to do with the way that social media works. Basically, the way that Thunderclap works is that you make a campaign of some sort, then you get your friends and families and everyone, etc., to go sign up for that Thunderclap, and what will happen is that they will all say yes to being a part of your Thunderclap campaign. And when your game is released or when something specific happens, then all of these accounts that signed up for your Thunderclap, they will all post at the same time automatically with a tweet or a Facebook post or whatever. And if you have enough people doing that, then that will actually have an impact, because people will see it. It'll come up in recommended feeds more often, because it's not like one post here, one post there. They were all posted within a reasonable amount of time. So yeah, I would definitely look up investing into something like Clap. I don't know how much it costs. I think it's like, I don't know, $100, $200, $500 maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I think
yeah, definitely worth something. Remember, if you're investing money into your project, it's because you believe in it. If you're making a free project that's going to be sort of like just trickle in 5 cents every other day, obviously don't invest a ton of money in that. Just release it for free, keep on going, make like 50 small games, and by the time you're ready to make something big where you've invested a lot of your life and money, that's when you're going to want to pay for advertising.
Yeah. Also, something that you need to think about when doing Thunderclap, I've seen it done right and wrong. Also remember that what the message is that's going to be posted out is super important. And I've seen a lot of where it's like, it's not wrong to ask people to buy the game or like kind of hardcore advertising, but I'd also think like there's a reason why those don't get a lot of clicks or likes then in social media. So think also about the content of that tweet that everybody signs up for, because you can get so much more if you still should advertise your game, don't get me wrong, you need to have that in there, there's pointless without it, but also think about creative ways to make it interesting, so it also has other value than just advertising your game. I think that thinking that way, you might get more traction, even with less people signing up.
Yeah. I mean, generally, you never want to tell people, buy my game. I know that this is how
don't buy my game
works in some countries, I guess, that is like the very super aggressive thing about, buy now and get this and blah, blah, blah for free and blah, 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 blah. But if you look through Facebook, if you look through a lot of the advertisements that you see in online, it's not really asking you to buy something. It's kind of more like showing you something you didn't and making you interested in it. Like some people do it with sex appeal. Like they'll have images of scantily clad women. Some games,
clad
mind you, I don't approve of this way of marketing. I absolutely hate it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. You'll see companies showing footage of games that look super awesome, but the real gameplay isn't like that. But it still makes you click it because you want to see it. Like, I mean, earlier today I saw a 2D MMO that was released or patched or something, and It was basically a picture of a really strangely drawn woman that didn't wear a lot of clothes, and the anatomy was totally wrong. And I was like, I was literally thinking, I'm not intrigued by the image. It's not that I think this woman without clothes is interesting to look at. It's so badly drawn that I want to see what the game looks like. So in a way, it worked. I mean, it was like they took the sex appeal and turned it into something weird, like, or backwards or whatever. And it's interesting, kind of look and see what other people do. Or, in vein of what we read today in the book, look and see what they do in other industries. Used car salespersons advertise. How do birds advertise? Maybe you put on a feather suit and you dance and stuff, and maybe you'll attract attention like that. Try to look at it from a different perspective and not only looking at it from a game development perspective.
Yeah, I think first off, hello,
Costa.
Chinese character things. I don't know how your name is spelled. I don't know enough Chinese characters to be able to read that. Maybe it's something. I know that the 4 dots means fire, and so it's maybe a heating appliance or something from the kitchen. But welcome to the company Game Devs anyway.
Ni
Here's
hao.
how to follow. Ni hao. Or if you're not from China, whatever you greet there. I don't know. There's a lot of different countries that use that. I think you actually touched upon it in your marketing speech, is that a lot of the time you see an ad and it's more like the gameplay looks more awesome in the video and or the advertisement than in the actual game. And I think that's what you need to do. Like, I'm not saying try to make it more fun than the actual game is. You, of course, try to make a game that is as fun as that video. But once you find the video, like, actually, this is something that Ryan Clark, who made Crypt of the Necrodancer, talks about in Gamma Sutra, is that make your trailer. So make a trailer of the game you're going to make, because then you're going to be able to find what is the core of your game, kind of. Because then you can actually match what you're advertising. And also, I think that's how you need to think about advertising. How can I make the most entertaining video, image, whatever, or interesting / entertaining, so people will click it? And then, of course, the next question, of course, like you said, then you come to the game and you're like, oh, there's nothing like I thought. That's just you not then delivering the promise. That's a whole different set. Like if you buy an expensive phone and it's a cheap knockoff, right? So those are kind of 2 different problems. That doesn't mean that making really entertaining advertisement would be bad. It's definitely something you need to do. And that's what you need to achieve. Not necessarily even tell about your game, like, this is how my game works. It's more about engaging the people, creating something, a piece of entertainment or in itself. Let's see here, what are the comments?
Yes.
I want to just pick that up because to kind of not make it look like if you have an entertaining ad that it would be a bad thing. I know a lot of game players get annoyed by that because then the game doesn't deliver on its promises, but that's more a different problem. Then you need to level up your game making abilities or something. A lot of the time I see those games being like bigger productions and they just ran out of money. Kind of the trailer is kind of the vision they wanted to make, and then the game that they actually got to make or could afford to make couldn't match that.
That's an interesting one by Spectrum. He says, make a Udemy course on how you made the game. And I've actually seen a lot of people do that. And it's useful because you learn as a student, you learn how to make a specific game, and that can teach you a lot of stuff. But as a course developer, 1, you make a lot of money. 2, you also make people, it gives you an opportunity to plug and to advertise for your company, for your games. So I mean, if you have learned how to teach, then definitely make video tutorials, make YouTube make a YouTube channel where you tell how to do certain things. That's a really, really good suggestion.
Yeah.
I think, anyway.
I think it depends on, like, it's a bit like when we discussed, like, how do you take notes? Do you take it on a whiteboard or do you take it on a notepad? And how it relates to this is that, for example, why am I streaming and not making YouTube videos? Is because streaming is more kind of the media and the thing I'm able to do and I think that I'm good at versus making YouTube videos. I can, of course, make these into YouTube videos. And the same thing, if I think, for example, as a game developer, making Udemy, it's kind of not in my wheelhouse. It's a bit like if I can still take notes. I love whiteboards, so it's a bad example. But let's say I would take notes in a different way and it doesn't really fit me. So if you're a person who loves to educate, you feel it that it's easy for you, go create Udemy course. That's excellent. But if it's outside of your comfort zone, then definitely don't feel like you're forced to. It's you can waste a lot of time when you could be doing other stuff that are similar but inside of your wheelhouse or how you work. It's very personal. Like for example, Tasty I think would be an excellent Udemy instructor. I mean, you teach every day. Teaching is something that you've been practicing a long time. So you definitely, I think it would be, for example, I think it's going to be much more easy for Tasty than it would be for me to, for example, do that.
Yeah, but again, teaching requires a lot of structure. It requires a lot of work in terms of video editing and stuff afterward. And there's a huge difference between teaching third graders and fifth graders and then teaching adults.
Yeah, of course. And that's something you need to keep in mind. So don't, like, I think the thunderclap is something everybody should do because you need to anyway be able to market in social media, and that's another tool. But don't wait for that. Start advertising social media now. Share what you're working on. Create a community. And then when it comes to Udemy courses, if you feel like that's something you could do well and it kind of fits your process anyway, and maybe you're yourself are learning and that's the way you learn is by teaching others. There's a lot of people, like I feel like you Heart Beast, for example, why he's doing those Udemy courses and he then creates the games out of them is because that's also how he learns and how he processes things, by teaching others. Like I used to do that in school actually a lot of the time. How I would of course read for exams, but one of my main things was actually helping others just before like the exam. Like I would have a questions, I would prepare a question, ask them, and I would actually learn more from that than actually reading the stuff. So yeah, it's very personal.
Yeah, a smart person once said something along the lines of, you only really truly understand something once you can teach other people about it.
Yeah. Let's see here. There's a lot of chat comments. Let's see here. Yeah.
Flippo, if you want to. Flippo says, I always like to share a post-mortem after I made a game. For those who don't know, post-mortem is it's basically a write-up in games industry where you talk about what went right and what went wrong during the creation of your game. Definitely post that in the Discord. That would be awesome for people to read, I think.
Exactly. Hey, I'm Rose Spaya. Welcome to the company Game Devs, and cheers for the follow. I think also it's important to note that not everybody can create postmortems. I've seen a lot of devs struggle to do it. They feel like they have to. And then what happens is that they fail at it. It's kind of too much and they can't. It's like such a humongous undertaking for them. It's not part of their natural process. And for them, I say, then don't make it a huge thing at the end. Like I said, post your development as you do it. So, and that takes much less work. You can share what did you get done every day on Twitter and post a picture, a video, a GIF, and talk about the struggles you had or the success you had. And that's kind of in the end. Then even if you want to do a postmortem, you can collect all those tweets, and then that kind of works as your basis for things. Slovakia, thank you. No,
your accent is amazing. You sound like friend from Slovakia.
Cool. Yeah, we're from Europe. both of us. I'm from Finland.
Yeah.
And
I'm from Denmark.
no, Tasty's from Slovakia. No?
No, no, no.
No,
No,
no.
I'm from Denmark. I'm Danish. I'm a Viking. Yarr.
That's how all Danes identify themselves.
Yes, I
We
am
gotta-
clearly a blonde Viking with brown hair. Yeah, it is
That
more
is-
Russian. I know.
Yeah. So for next, should we? I think we should stop. We already been going for 2.5 hours. It's been very interesting, but I need to let you go. Not force you to sit here.
We need to read this comment by Rob the Decent. He's like, I'm sorry for bad England. I sold my wife for internet connection.
Oh. He's a great
Sorry,
name.
I just thought that was really funny. I'm sorry for your loss of your wife.
Oh, but I congratulate you for gain internet. Very best.
Yeah, best internet in all of town.
Yes. Now you can show off your #1 gold watch.
I think
we
it's
need to
time
stop.
to take a break.
It's time to take a break.
We're starting to make fun of things we shouldn't.
Exactly. We love you all, no matter where you come from. Thank you very much, all you.
You all rock.
You all
You
rock.
rock.
Exactly. And everybody's welcome. No matter if you're from Finland and have an odd accent, or if you're from the US and you sound like a manly man. Or
Manly man.
if you are a girly man like me. So for the next stream, we need to be careful. I'm like, we're on the edge. It's a long drop. Okay, so for next time, should we continue with two? How do you feel the two chapters is working? Is that
I feel that 2 chapters is we shouldn't do more than that
yeah, and also
because we're good at talking about things that aren't in the chapters.
hey, where's your chocolate cake today? Where's your pancakes? I wanna.
There's none of that, but I did have lasagna, and it was lasagne. It was very good.
Ooh,
Yummy.
that sounds amazing.
So I had lasagna and salad right before the stream, and I don't think I wiped my mouth. So I'm constantly looking at my lips and thinking, are they orange from the meat sauce? Maybe they are.
Nah, I think you look fine, dude. I don't see any meat sauce. I
Good.
do see a night elf though. Hey, thank you for the sub. Everybody in chat, some hype for Imris Praya. Ooh, and the
Hype-oo!
bits. Hype.
And we have a bit.
We will do some dancing once we get back from our break for all the subs.
I'm curious though, are those 10 bits going to take away from my castle hit points?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm so sorry. I have failed at streaming.
Yeah, for those who don't know, we'll have to explain it later. But totally, hypoo for the sabu.
Exactly.
Welcome to the Habibis.
Yeah, every sub, every bit, everything goes towards making more content like this. Us buying books like The Art of Game Design, going through with your guys, and all kinds of shenanigans. And we will be back with the Game Design Book Club next Sunday. So if you own the book, you can read up on the next 2 chapters. If you don't own a book, don't worry. You can still follow along. We try to cover the major points of the chapters. And if you want to buy the book, the link is below. You can find it on Amazon. This is the fast way to get it. So we'll take a short pause. We will be back in 5 minutes. Everybody will run off. You can go to the toilet. And when we come back, we will again do the art challenge. And I'm thinking of drawing like, I don't remember who in Discord was like, you should draw some like animals, like cosplay kind of thing. So I'm intrigued.
Ooh.
So maybe we do some cats in Star Wars outfits after the stream. So we do 4 different poses, or 3 to 4, depending on the time. And we try to draw them in within 20 minutes. Ooh.
Yeah, let me find it real quick. Or not.
6 hours later. I
No,
promise you, it is
I'll
here.
find it. Fast. Almost there. Maybe. Or not.
Furry stream.
It was a request by the kids where I work. They were like, you need to draw a panda and he needs to be like a Sith Lord. I was like, wait, what? I don't have reference.
There you
And
go.
it became this, and he broke the city or something with force hands and stuff. Lightsaber, blah.
I have something to say, but I'm not gonna say it on stream. I don't think it's safe for. It
What?
looks like he did something on that picture.
It looks like he did something on the picture.
Yeah.
Peed himself on the floor.
Maybe.
It's the shadow.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, Tasty's really good with art. I love all his art, and I'm gonna force him into forced labor. That sounds now weird. That sounds like you're pregnant. But I'm gonna force him to make some T-shirts for us, so we can get some awesome game dev related T-shirts with pandas and Sith lords.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, we're using
That doesn't
Discord.
sound like a copyright issue at all.
Exactly. What the Discord actually uses Skype technology, I think. I heard some rumor. Anyway, we'll sit here and talk about all these kind of things. We'll be back in 5 minutes, so don't run away. If you do run away, come back in 5 minutes and we'll do art challenge and we will be back with this. And if you make your own game, by the way, you can submit it to me and I'll give you constructive feedback every Tuesday. So just write !submit, or actually I can do it for you. And there's just a Google form, and that's on Tuesdays though. So we'll be back.
And if you do plan on leaving, then thank you so much for stopping by.
Exactly. And
But
please
don't
do
leave.
follow. Please do follow if you like the type of content we're creating. It always sends a good signal, so we know you guys want more. More. So 2 more chapters, and Tasty, I see you next week.
Yep. Thanks for having me, and I'll see you in chat in 5 minutes.
Ooh.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, wait, where's the off button? Here it is. Bye.